Hello, everyone. I am Chester44, also known as Fly, and welcome to another random vlog of randomness. Although it will be actually more of an actual vlog instead of me just rambling about things going on. Also, I apologize for everything looking a bit more green than it should be. I normally do this in the normal home instance in VR chat because I don't really have a special one for myself, and unfortunately they're doing some kind of Halloween thing and I can't figure out how to get rid of that setting. Kind of annoying. Anyway, why am I making this vlog? Well, it is not for any reason of any changes going on or any problems going on or anything like that. I just want to do some time to talk about the trip I went on, because I have that opportunity, and, well, I had mentioned I had gone on the trip. So, why don't I talk about that for a moment? Or more than a moment, probably more like a couple of minutes. Yes, that's probably a bit more accurate. Anyway, for those of you who didn't know and are just picking up, even though I've mentioned it in a couple of videos, I happened to complete my apprenticeship as an electrician back in May, and in order to celebrate, I decided to take a cross-country trip going from the east coast of the US to the west coast of the US, stopping to visit the various friends who I happened to have years, ranging from 5 years to almost 20. Also, I apologize for the glitch there. I don't know why that happened. Anyway, so it took about 2 weeks, and it was actually quite enjoyable. I'd say I had a good time for the most part. So, how about we go through the blow by blow? Hopefully with less glitching out of my body like that. Anyway, let's see, bit by bit. Yes, this is going to be what the talking is going to be for a while. So, first stop was going to be Maryland. Driving from New York to Maryland was honestly not really that special or unique. I've driven to Pittsburgh several times in the past. I've driven down that way a couple times. It was really nothing unique or special. So, not really anything to say there. I've seen all that before. The friend in Maryland was someone who, I'd say is my oldest friend in more ways than one. I've known her for almost 20 years, I think. First meeting her on a forum for, the official forums for Myst 3, and it was a nice time. We talked and socialized for a while. I brought her some New York bagels, because you gotta have New York bagels, and, she did a bit of singing and playing of her guitar for me, and it was a nice time. I arrived early enough that we could basically have lunch together, we did dinner together, and that was the first day. Nice, easy to meet. Second person I visited went all the way down from Maryland to Raleigh, North Carolina. Most of it was, again, the same kind of stuff that I'm used to seeing. Same kind of, okay, trees on either side, driving down the road or interstate or whatever. It's same kind of thing, blah, blah, blah. Right up until I hit US 1. At that point, all of a sudden, everything just massively opened up. The barrier in the middle was just wide open grass. Either side was large passes of grass before the trees showed up. And there was the occasional, mailbox, which was surprising. And once I hit this, I immediately went, oh, okay, this is different. This is something I haven't experienced or seen like this before. This seems weird. So that was the first moment of, okay, things are different. I'm in another area. I did eventually get to my friend's place. Again, we had lunch. It was pizza. I left them some more New York bagels, because even though they were a day old, they're still good. We chatted, socialized. She showed me her house. I went around and saw her house, saw her pets, spoke with her roommate slash boyfriend and other roommate slash not boyfriend, and like I said, we socialized, we hung out, watched YouTube videos and stuff like that. it was a nice visit. I've met them several times before. In fact, just to mention in passing, all of these friends who I met up with, the one in North Carolina is the only one who I've actually met before. Every single other person, I was meeting them for the first time. Known them for years, never met them in person before. Even though I've pretty much heard almost all their voices. So, that was an entertaining bit of things. Once again, I had arrived early enough that I could basically I stayed there for the day, and the next day I moved on. Next stop was North Carolina to Virginia. And before you say I had to pass through Virginia in order to get to North Carolina from Maryland, I will point out I was driving to the west side of Virginia. So, I wasn't, not West Virginia, the west side of Virginia, that little narrow bit. So, I wasn't going through it. And honestly, it kind of worked out considering things. That trip was very different because I wasn't really able to take an interstate. There was no interstate going between them. Instead, I was taking state roads through that, which was very different because unlike the other places, it was one lane going in each direction, twisting and turning around down between up and over hills and between farmland and fields and the like, still trees on either side, so that was a little nervous, and I went a good portion of the distance until eventually I realized, oh, okay, I've made it a good ways. It's only an hour 20 minutes until I get there in 60 miles? Wait a minute. I mean, I'm not driving that slow. I mean, 55 miles an hour is a speed limit. It should say I get there in 60 minutes. Why is it taking so long to get 60 miles? And then I saw the sign that said 6 miles ahead with the little twisty sign on it saying Mountain Road. And I went, oh. Then I actually got to that mountain road and I started driving down very tight turns, going very slowly, and went, oh, now I get it. So that was a very different drive. Still, I was able to get there by lunch, hung out with that friend there. We had a nice time. We had lunch, dinner eventually. We socialized and chatted for a bit, watched some anime for a while, and at the end, he ran a one-shot D&D campaign for myself and his roommate, which was nice. I don't get to play D&D very much as I like it. So that was a nice visit. The next one was a drive from Virginia to Nashville. The drive was mostly unremarkable, but the beginning was a bit interesting because that morning was very, very foggy. And driving out of Virginia, or out of the town I was in, it was interesting because I was again going through mountains, but you couldn't really see it because of how foggy it was. I could see the car right in front. I could see the car a little bit ahead of me and the truck to the side, and it was still like 2 lanes. No, actually it was 2 lanes wide on the road I was going on. But anyway, I could see the car in front of me and the truck to the side, but I couldn't see that far. Until I got high enough that I could get over the fog, and I was able to look over to the side and see the valleys with the fog laying down within it, which was definitely interesting, until I ended up going down into the fog again. So, for that period of driving was, again, a little interesting, until eventually I got out of it, and it was back to driving through forests and the like, and wasn't necessarily that interesting. And then I went to Nashville, where I stayed in a hotel for one night and left. Nashville wasn't going to be where I was meeting someone. It was just a stopgap because the next place I was going to meet someone was in Arkansas. Virginia to Arkansas is something like 12-hour drive. That's a bit much, even for me. I say even for me, but I've never really done these kinds of drives before. But regardless, 12 hours in a day is a bit much. So that was why there was a stop in Nashville. Now, the drive from Nashville to Arkansas, that was, well, for about half of it, it wasn't that remarkable. I drove Nashville to Memphis, and it was like, okay, this is just more of the same, nothing too interesting. Just like a bit of hills, a bit of a bit of hills, maybe mountains somewhere. I don't even remember that much. We got to Memphis. Okay, urban city, such. I get to the Mississippi. I can't see too much of it because, A, I'm driving, B, bridge, and bridges have sides, so you can't really see that much. So I wasn't able to see much of the great Mississippi. But I drive over the Mississippi. I get to West Memphis. Apparently there's a West Memphis. I go through it. It's like, okay, urban, city, flat fields. It just hit me immediately like that. And I'm like, oh, that's sudden. I'm definitely somewhere else. And yeah, that was different. As the friend in Arkansas said, welcome to the country. Was it the country? It was something like that. Regardless, there was one other interesting thing that I did there, which was, I had to stop for lunch on the way. In fact, most of the places I had to stop for lunch on the way. It was only like the first 3 places I didn't have to, but stop for lunch on the way at some place I've never been to before. Waffle House. I've never eaten at a Waffle House before. We don't really have them in New York. So, that was a new thing. I got like a waffle, hash browns with like ham and tomato in them. I got a side of bacon. I got all that. And I looked at the price and I'm like, all that for $10? What the fuck? How is that so cheap? Again, I'm from New York, near New York City. Things aren't exactly cheap there. So that was surprising. And the food was actually good. I will say that. Something I'll have to try more sometimes if I ever end up traveling again and somewhere around a Waffle House. But it was good. And so I ended up at the friend in Arkansas. Sort of a smallish town, I believe, where they were. At least it wasn't exactly a major city. I think it was like an hour out of Little Rock, something like that. Regardless, I stayed with him and his girlfriend. We chatted and socialized. Yes, I know that's common. Shush. We chatted and socialized. We watched videos on YouTube. I remedied a sin because somehow they had never seen The Princess Bride before. I mean, it's a great freaking movie. We did a little bit of gaming and the like. I stayed there 2 nights and then proceeded to move on. The next drive was from Arkansas to Dallas, where I met up with a friend I suppose I can mention in name, because I have collaborated with them, and they do post on YouTube on occasion. You know what, I'm just gonna keep these things anonymous. So I went to Dallas, stayed in a hotel room there, stayed in the hotel room the night, the next day, right, the drive to Dallas. Honestly, I don't even remember it. It must have been that little... It left that little of an impact on me, because I really don't remember any of it. So, yeah. Anyway, got to Dallas, stayed there the night. The next day, a friend picked me up. We went and had lunch, so I managed to try out Texas barbecue, which was okay. And then, because we had to go out and do things, we ended up going to, of all things, the Texas State Fair, because that happened to be happening. Why not? Which was... I mean, I've never been to a state fair before, so that was a little interesting and a bit of something new. It was... I mean, we didn't really... I didn't pay the money to buy anything, like any of the massive amounts of fried food or any tickets to any rides or any of the games or anything, but... Considering apparently how you do it is you don't buy things individually, you buy like a load of tickets and then pay a number of tickets for each thing in order to do it, and I just didn't want to deal with that kind of crap. So we just wandered around and looked around, saw the various rides, saw the various games, saw the trucks on display, saw the animals that were displayed right next to where it said how they got to your plate. How fitting to show that to the children. But it was all right. After that, we ended up going bowling. I lost all of the games. And then after that, went to... it was like a sort of video game history museum, We showed up like 45 minutes before they closed. Or was it half an hour before they closed? Point is, they were almost closed, but we showed up there for a bit. Then we got Pizza Hut and ate it back in the room. Socialized for a little bit there, and that was overall a fairly nice time. Then the day after that, I moved on and did the next drive. The long one from Dallas to Albuquerque. It was like almost 10 hours. So yeah, that was a long one. As for how that drive was, well, what I remember of that drive was driving for a ways through a good amount of Texas, and eventually coming to the point where I'm driving along and I'm just like, okay, yeah, it's all flat and everything, and oh, look, there's windmill power over there. A lot of them. Okay, continue onwards, and oh, look, a little oil derrick. And there's another, and another. Okay, there's a whole bunch of these. And then eventually it was like, okay, it's still flat. Am I in the desert yet? Am I in the desert? Oh, hey, plateaus. I guess I'm kind of entering the desert. There's a lot more grass in this desert than I expected, and no cacti. Apparently it's a different kind of cacti around there, not what you'd expect. I live in the city. All I know is what comes from media, okay? I'm not exactly the most outdoorsy type. I don't know these regions. Anyway, it wasn't that bad. It was, I guess, a little bit interesting seeing some of those things. But that was something. Albuquerque I met with probably my closest friend. Once I arrived, he was so eager to see me that he immediately came right over that night to the hotel room that I was staying in, again. And we ended up watching some anime that we kind of had saved up because first episodes of the season, and these are anime we watch together, so of course we're going to watch together in person because it's a rare opportunity. Had dinner together. The next day was when I was expecting to meet him, but he was busy for basically most of the day, so I basically lounged around in the hotel room for a while until he showed up that evening. We got food again. We socialized, watched one or two things on YouTube and the like, and eventually moved on. It was a decent visit, and it was nice to see him. It was a good time. After that was the trip from Albuquerque to Phoenix. This branch was the most interesting branch that of all of the drives that I had so far. And I'll be honest, I kind of want to do it again just because the hardest thing about it was keeping my eyes on the road. I had a choice there. I could either drive down the interstate and then back down the interstate, or I could drive partway down the interstate and then take state roads down. It was exactly the same time either way. It was just the state roads one was a little shorter, so I went with the state roads option, which I think was a good choice. Driving down the interstate, seeing all the plateaus and cliffs and all of that stuff, barren instead of covered in trees like out east where all the mountains were, that was different. That was very interesting, and I kept wanting to look at those and see how the geography was. Interesting things like driving along, and you see the side of the road, and everything is all flat, and then all of a sudden, there's just a sudden appearance of a ditch about 10 feet deep, 20 feet wide, or something like that. I'm bad with estimation, with just sheer cliffs on the side that are just, it's clearly an old riverbed, and the way the cliffs were, it was interesting. Then I came to the state road, had to turn off onto that, and for a while it was just like, okay, this is all flat now. That's, okay, fine, I guess we're done with the interesting thing. And what the hell? Was that a massive windmill blade going in the other direction? Huh, okay. Then I kept driving down, and eventually I started getting, I guess these might have been mountains or hills or something, because I started getting trees and the like, and okay, there goes another windmill blade. Absolutely freaking massive, by the way. It was like Going the other way, I saw 3 massive windmill blades and the center engine just passing by, which was unexpected and interesting to see. Go up into what must have been mountains, still a little twisty, not quite as twisty as back in Virginia. But I'm driving along, and then all of a sudden, everything comes to a dead stop. The traffic I'm on, it's only one road in each direction, and the line I'm on, not moving. And I'm like, what? Why is this not moving? What's going on? I see the cars going in the other direction. Why aren't we driving? And I'm waiting there for a while until eventually the cars going in the other direction stop appearing. And then eventually we start moving. Okay, maybe it's brought down to one lane. I wonder why. Was there an accident or something? Or what could have done that? No, it turns out the reason they were doing that was because right on the side of the road, they were doing a burn-off, which was unexpected. For those who don't get what that is, I may be using the wrong term, but basically, burning off dead foliage and the like to ensure that massive wildfires don't get out of hand later on because we're too good at stopping fires. Sometimes you need to put in a fire in order to stop the bigger one. It makes sense. Trust me. So that was an interesting thing, having to drive by that and make sure I turn on the setting that ensures that the air conditioning doesn't bring in the air from the outside, because I don't want to be breathing in the smoke, which was kind of blowing over the road. Which is why we were stopped. They had one lane closed, so it was only one lane going back and forth. They could only let one side go at a time. So that was an interesting thing to go through. And then when I came out of the mountains, it was a fair bit downhill and going over the hills a bit and such. And it was interesting. I could see a massive distance and the like. It was the most interesting branch. Then I got to Phoenix, where I ended up staying with my cousin. And the day after that, I ended up meeting up with the friend who I was meeting in Phoenix. Another friend who I've known for a while. And let's see. We went out and did miniature golf. I got 69. Which isn't as nice as you think, because the other guy got 63. And then after that, we did games and the like in the arcade that happened to be there. And then, after chatting for a while, chatting also at lunch and the like, we parted. I went back to my cousin's house, stayed there the evening, and then the next day came the final branch, which was Phoenix to LA. I'll be honest, the most interesting thing I saw on that branch was seeing 2 wild horses walking along near the edge of the road. That was it. There was nothing remarkable about it aside from that. And I guess there was also seeing all the cacti, but honestly, I was seeing them in the latter part of the Albuquerque to Phoenix branch, so it wasn't really that interesting. At LA, I stayed with my aunt and uncle and sister, although my aunt took a day to get there. She was out at something else in Vegas. So I stayed there that evening. The next day, I went to the Long Beach Aquarium with my sister. Had a decent time there. Also did lunch with her. And did some socializing with my sister and my uncle, and eventually when she showed up, my aunt. And then the day after that, I took the rental car back to the rental place, got onto the plane, and came back here to New York. I had to take the plane later than I would have liked, so seeing the lights of the various cities I passed was a little interesting. But that's the most I can really say there. It was a plane ride. I've taken plane rides before. And that was ultimately the trip. Overall, I'm glad I did it. It was nice to be able to meet up with the various friends who I've known for so many years, to hang with them, speak to them in person, do things with them. Seeing parts of the country, aside from... Some bits of it were interesting. For the most part, that wasn't why I went. But again, the one part I do definitely want to do again is the Albuquerque to Phoenix drive. It was the one part I'd say was absolutely phenomenal. There was one rest stop that I should have stopped at that I wish I had, because that would have actually been a great photo opportunity. Sadly, I didn't, because I'm stupid. But overall, I enjoyed it. I don't know if I'm ever going to do it again. Maybe I'd do something, or at least visit other friends sometime in the future. But yeah, overall, it was nice. And I wanted to do this vlog talking about it, instead of real life stuff or channel stuff or the like. So, yeah, I guess it's mainly what I wanted to talk about. I don't have anything else really to say, except that now that I'm done with that, all the prep work is gone after the last couple of months, the trip is done, and all that. So I'm going to be back to business as usual. The streams will get back to starting on Saturday, as they normally do, and the videos will continue on YouTube as they always do. So, thank you for listening to me ramble a bit and talk about my trip. I do hope you enjoy. If there are any questions you have about what I did over it, feel free to ask, or anything else, Insert like, comment, and subscribe crap here. And, yeah. Thanks for watching, and I shall see you all soon enough. Ta!